Hey, it's Kyle here, and I just got back from DragonCon 2023. Absolutely loved it as normal. DragonCon is definitely one of my favorite times of the year. I believe this is about the 7th or 8th year I've went, so I probably becoming a little bit of a DragonCon veteran at this point, but had an amazing time again this year, and I kind of wanted to touch on some of my highlights. I mainly go to a lot of the panels, so I'm going to give you a rundown of all the panels I went and what I thought of them. Before that, I did want to just kind of touch on some other general thoughts on DragonCon this year. One is always the cosplay is amazing. I think that's what a lot of people know DragonCon for. All the cosplay every year just gets better and better, so creative. I usually encourage people, if you ever go, definitely set aside some time just to walk around and check out the cosplay, because a lot of times you get so busy trying to schedule activities to do and stuff that if you don't leave time just to go around and look at all the cosplay, you miss out on a lot. So I definitely recommend that. Like I said, this year, as normal, the cosplay was amazing. I'm always interested in going what the most common cosplays will be that year, because there's always a few trendy ones that will pop up. This year, I would say it's definitely Barbie and Ken were for sure, I think, the most popular cosplays you saw around the con. You definitely heard a whole lot of Hi Barbie and Hi Ken throughout DragonCon the entire weekend. So that was probably the most common cosplay. There were some other, popular ones. For sure saw a lot of the prisoners from Andor, Narkina 5. That was maybe the most trendy Star Wars costume. Every year you're seeing more and more of those inflatables. It's branched out, just not dinosaurs anymore. Like I saw a couple chicken versions of it, a couple cow versions of it. So you're seeing more and more of those inflatables every year. There's always a lot of Deadpools. That's a very common, very popular cosplay the last few years. But Barbie and Ken definitely win the crown this year for the most popular cosplays at DragonCon 2023. The DragonCon parade is also always very awesome. Sadly, this year I only got to saw the very tail end of the parade. I actually stay at home during DragonCon, and I take Marta into Atlanta every day to enjoy the festivities. That's usually not an issue, but on parade day, sadly there was a traffic accident on the main interstate leading to the Marta station that I take, and so instead of taking me about 30 minutes to get to the station, it took me probably closer to like an hour and 15 minutes to get to the station, so I was sitting in traffic for a while. So instead of getting there for the start of the parade, I got there right when the parade was ending. Luckily, I did get to see, I would say that maybe the last 10 minutes of the parade, so I got to enjoy a little bit of it. And it wasn't too big of a deal because I have seen the parade before, so I didn't feel like I was completely missing out on something I had to experience before. But I do always enjoy the parade. It's a lot of fun. So I'm a little bit bummed that I didn't get to see the full parade this year, but glad I got to see a little bit of it. So if you've never been to DragonCon, I would definitely recommend checking out the parade on Saturday. Now I'm going to go through the panels I went through, and I'm going to be looking at my phone. DragonCon has a great app, and it lets you build your schedule on it, so I can go back and look at everything that I attended. First, I do want to mention this year, like the last few years, I've had the privilege of being on some panels at DragonCon. It's an amazing experience. And I got to do 2 panels this year. I was both in the Star Wars Trek. I was on a panel called The Culture and the History of the Mandalorians on Thursday evening. And then on Friday, I was on a panel to talk about Ahsoka and what the panelists were thinking about the first 3 episodes of that series, because when DragonCon happened, only 3 episodes had came out yet. For that panel, I also was the moderator, which that's the first time I got to moderate a panel at DragonCon, which was a lot of fun. The Mandalorian panel, we didn't really know what to expect. I think it was the first time Star Wars had ever done a panel on Thursday evening at DragonCon, and Thursday evening is usually not a big day at DragonCon. This year, it seemed like a huge number of people there were already there on Thursday, a lot more than normal. So we had a standing room only for our panel, which I think, me personally, I was thinking, oh, if we're like half full on Thursday, that'll be a good crowd. I definitely was not expecting a full crowd, and they seemed to really enjoy the panel. My other panelists, I really was awed by their knowledge of all things Mandalorian. I definitely learned a lot on that panel, which is always fun to be on a panel, but you still feel like you're learning other things from the other panelists. I chimed in with some of my political science background on some of the elements of the Mandalorians that we can relate to real-world political societies from history, like the Spartans, the Crusader orders, the samurai, stuff like that. But that was a really fun panel. I enjoyed it a lot, and like I said, seeing that big of a crowd on Thursday evening made me think, oh, this is going to be a really cool Dragon Con. Panel I was on for Friday for the Ahsoka one. Had a lot of fun moderating it. Again, the panelists all came with some really cool ideas and opinions on how Ahsoka's been developing so far. Again, another really full room. Everybody in the crowd seemed to be really enjoying the show a lot. Some really cool questions, some really cool theories. And it really made me even more excited to see the rest of Ahsoka. And I hope everybody else in that room felt the same way. It was a very positive panel. There were really not much negative feedback from the show. So as personally somebody who's been enjoying the show so far, I really like seeing at least everybody in the room seemed to be enjoying it a lot too. So the other panelists on there did a great job, had some really cool opinions and input on what they've liked about the show so far. Now, I guess I'll transition from what I did as a panelist to what I attended, actually, is going to panels, which, again, is what I really go to Dragon Con for. I love attending panels. So on Friday, I didn't go to any other panels on Thursday. I just moderated. I wouldn't moderate the Thursday panel. I was a panelist on that Thursday one, and I picked up my badge. That's all I did at Dragon Con on Thursday. On Friday, the first panel I attended was Jurassic Park, 30 Years of Nature Finding a Way. And this was a really cool panel where like the panelists really kind of reflected on the movie, how it impacted them when they first saw it, what their favorite parts were, and why do they think that the movie Jurassic Park is still kind of resonating with the culture today. There was a lot of Jurassic Park content at Dragon Con this year because it was the 30th anniversary. So you also saw a lot of a lot of Jurassic Park cosplay this year at Dragon Con, a lot more than normal. I think that was because a lot of people had it in their mind because it was the 30th anniversary. But that was a really fun panel I enjoyed a lot. I'm a big Stargate fan, and there's always a lot of Stargate panels at Dragon Con. So this year, I usually attend a couple. This year, actually, I only attended one. That's the way the schedule worked out. But I attended Stargate, the TV, movies, and beyond. And as that panel topic suggests, is really talking about the made-for-TV movies that Stargate did after these shows were kind of taken off the air, and kind of exploring the successes and failures of those movies and what we might see in the future in regard to Stargate. Like most of the panels I go to, this was a fan-led panel, really cool discussion. Stargate's always been one of my favorite things, so anytime I get to hear people talk about Stargate, I always enjoy it a lot. Then you had the Ahsoka panel that I moderated that I've already talked about. After that, I did another Star Wars panel that I attended, which was Star Wars Rebels Revisited. I really enjoyed that panel a lot, probably because to get ready for Ahsoka, which a lot of people were kind of jokingly calling the 5th season of Star Wars Rebels, I went back and rewatched Rebels very recently in the last month. So Rebels is very fresh on my mind. So I really enjoyed that panel of hearing people that are much more bigger Star Wars Rebels fans than I am. Really kind of delved deep into that show. It was a really fun discussion, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I didn't mean to imply I'm not a fan of Rebels. Some Star Wars fans, the animation is their number one thing they love about it. I love the Star Wars cartoons. Sorry, I can't talk. Tired from Dragon Con. But I kind of didn't start watching the cartoons until they'd been on the air for several years. So I always feel like I'm a more casual fan of the animated series, where like maybe I've rewatched them a couple of times, where some people will probably rewatch Clone Wars and Rebels in double digits. So those are the die-hard animation fans. I always enjoy hearing from them, and they definitely have a lot more knowledge on those series than I do, and I really enjoy people talking about something they have such extensive knowledge of. So that was a fun Star Wars panel to attend. Next up, I attended something I also try to attend every year at Dragon Con, and that is a production by the Atlanta Radio Theater Company. It's a really cool organization based in Atlanta that does these radio plays throughout the year that you can kind of listen to, but they do live performances at events like Dragon Con. It's always a lot of fun. The panel I attended, they actually did 3 productions over the course of an hour. So almost like think of like short story type productions. They were really cool. You had a funny one, you had kind of an uplifting one, and there was kind of a spooky, scary one, and it was a lot of fun. I actually wanted to attend another one of their productions later in the weekend, but conflicted with one of my favorite things to do at Dragon Con, so I had to skip it. And I'll get to that thing later, but I definitely recommend checking out stuff by the Atlanta Theater Company if you ever attend Dragon Con. That wrapped up on my Friday. Then on Saturday, after the parade, which I got to see a little bit of, I went to another Star Wars cartoon panel. This one was just Star Wars cartoons, where they talked about all the animated content that Star Wars has put out, from the well-known recent series like Bad Batch, Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, to some lesser known stuff that was done in the 80s, like Ewoks, for example, to the much maligned holiday special, which did feature a cartoon in it. A couple of my friends, Nick and Carmelo, were on that panel, so it was nice seeing them and also meeting them in person. Again, a really fun panel, and they talked about some animated stuff that I wasn't even aware that existed, so that was a very informative and interesting and entertaining panel. Then I attended another Jurassic Park panel. It's actually a panel that I wanted to attend the year before, but the room filled up and I was able to get in. I was at the back of the line, didn't make it in. This year I skipped the panel ahead of it so I could get in line earlier and made it in, and that is Jurassic Park Done Right, which is basically you had some people, expertise in like paleontologists, you had some expertise in zoos and aquariums, and they really talked about, if you were developing a Jurassic Park in real world, how would you do it safely? And then kind of touching on the dumb things Jurassic Park did in the movie that was just dumb decisions that were basically almost like they were designing a park to be unsafe. It was really interesting, entertaining, funny panel, but also you learn stuff at the same time. So I hope they keep on doing these Jurassic Park panels, kind of relate this in Time and Science. That if they do, I'll be attending these every year. Kind of talking about science, Dragon Con does have a few tracks that focus more on academic subjects, not just entertainment, which I think surprises a lot of people. And there is a track that kind of focuses on space-related stuff. I usually try to go to a couple of those every year, and the first one I attended in Dragon Con 2023 was What Happened to Mars, and that had a scientist who's has worked on a few projects related to Mars, talk about basically why Mars has developed the way it has not to be able to sustain life. Very interesting. Obviously, Mars has been in the news a lot as we ramp up possibility of human exploration of Mars. It was kind of fun just to learn a little bit more of Mars. I really enjoyed it. And then the last panel I attended on Saturday was William Shakespeare's Star Wars, a fan reading. They do this every year at the Star Wars track. There's this author, Ian Dosher, who wrote Star Wars Shakespeare adaptations of all the Star Wars movies. Again, I apologize, I can't talk, tired from Dragon Con. And every year they do kind of a production of that at Dragon Con. This year they did one for A New Hope, which the Shakespeare version is barely A New Hope. And all the parts are actually cast from the audience that's waiting in line to come in. So it's basically a reading. They give you props and you just read the scripts. It's a lot of fun, always very funny. This is the first year I actually was a part of the cast. I really didn't want to, but they had a few parts left at the end and they were having a hard time getting somebody. So they very nicely asked me if I'd be one of the smaller parts. I agreed. I was Red 7, one of the pilots who attacked the Death Star. Sadly, I had one line and immediately died after that. But it was still a lot of fun to kind of be a part of that panel on that side of it. On Sunday, it's probably my busiest day at Dragon Con that I attended the most stuff at. First thing in the morning, I attended Star Wars The High Republic panel, which talked about the High Republic book and comic series they've been doing the past couple of years. They've done do the first 2 phases of it. The 3rd phase will be coming out soon. A lot of fun. Alex from Star Wars Explained was the moderator for that. His knowledge on Star Wars is absolutely amazing. Again, Nick and Carmelo were also on that panel. I've actually loved the High Republic book so much that I really enjoyed that discussion. It was a lot of fun, and I could hear all sorts of High Republic content. So hopefully they'll do more of that at Dragon Con in the future. Next up, I attended another panel I've attended before that. It's a lot of fun. It's the Battle of the Fictional Bands, and basically everybody in the audience nominates some of their favorite bands from movies, TV shows, stuff like that. And then there's a bracket, and then the audience then votes elimination style of which of these fictional bands is the best. This year, Spinal Tap won, which I think was the favorite once we set the bracket. But that's always a lot of fun discussion. A lot of bands were nominated that I've never heard of, which is really cool because it gives you stuff to kind of look up, some movies and TV shows you weren't aware of. But a very fun, entertaining panel that I love every year. Next, I attended Rogers the Musical, a Dragon Con style table read. If you watch the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus, you'll remember Hawkeye attended a Broadway production of Rogers the Musical, which is kind of based on the life of Captain America. I think all the fans really love that a lot. So what some volunteers at Dragon Con did is fed us some stuff to ChatGPT and had them write, or had the AI write a script for a Rogers the Musical that was more heavy on dialogue, not so much music. And again, they cast the parts in the audience and did a reading of this production as the panel, and it was a lot of fun. Wasn't in this one, I just got to be in the audience, but I enjoyed, and it was a lot of fun. It was very interesting to see what AI's version of Marvel was. Then I attended a panel, Star Wars and the Modern Military, which you had some experts who worked for the DoD, military branches, and to basically just talk about how stuff we see in Star Wars actually can apply what we see in the modern world in relation to military. I always like the combination of Star Wars and academic interest, and this was a very entertaining panel that I enjoyed a lot. Kind of definitely appeals to me as somebody who has a degree in political science. A lot of the stuff they were talking to is stuff that I just find naturally interesting. So it's melding to my interest, my academic interest, and my interest in Star Wars. And I attended next another science panel, What's Cooking at the Laboratory, JPL Happenings, which is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which does a lot of work for NASA. And they basically just gave an overview of all the stuff they're working on, all the various satellites, rovers. Really cool to see what's going on and what the future of kind of human quest for knowledge in space is at the moment. A lot of really cool stuff, and the people in that room are so smart. It is inspiring. And then the last thing I attended on Dragon Con on Sunday, which is the reason I couldn't do another production of the Atlanta Radio Theater Company, is my favorite thing to go to Dragon Con every year, and that is the Star Wars Trivia Contest Final. I think it's generally regarded as the hardest Star Wars trivia contest in the country. You have to take a test to even qualify for it. So the finals featured the top 9 finishers, if I remember correctly. I feel like I know a lot about Star Wars. I maybe know 10% of the stuff that they're talking about in this trivia contest. It's always funny, entertaining, almost awe-inspiring that some people know so much about Star Wars. Alex from Star Wars Explained won, which I believe this is his 3rd time winning the contest. But as always, love the trivia contest, and every year I'll be going to Dragon Con. As long as they're in the trivia contest, I will always go to that contest. It's a blast. Monday is just like a half a day at Dragon Con. It's very shorter, a lot smaller. A lot of people don't go on Monday. I kind of enjoy it because it's a lot less crowded. So first up, I saw a panel with Adam Savage from Mythbusters, and it's kind of a question and answer panel where the audience just was able to ask questions. Adam Savage is just so smart, so funny, so entertaining. It was one of the better kind of Q&A sessions I've seen at Dragon Con, and he's definitely one of those people, if he comes back, and he's been to Dragon Con several times, I'll definitely always try to see a panel with him because he's just super entertaining, super likable, and his panels are just fun. So I definitely recommend seeing Adam Savage at a panel if you have a chance. So I attended another science panel. It was the last science panel I attended this year. That's weirdly hard things to study, where you basically had a bunch of scientists just talk about things that are hard to study that a lot of people would think would be easier to study. And it was really interesting to look at the scientific process, the challenges scientists face. One of the favorite or more interesting things I found them talking about was how hard it is to study people, because people are really bad at following instructions, and then they lie all the time. So anytime you're doing a study that's focusing on people, you have to factor those two things in, and it makes it really hard to get accurate data from studies that focus on human beings, which was kind of funny, some of the stories they told. Again, I always enjoy those scientific panels at Dragon Con. I will definitely go to more in the future when I attend. My last panel at Dragon Con this year was Star Wars Authors Mad Libs. And you basically had several Star Wars authors, including my favorite Star Wars author, Timothy Zahn, basically be thrown topics and come up with funny Star Wars stories to go along with it. So like they had a chance to talk about like if who's your favorite Star Wars character who does not have a line of dialogue? If you put them all together, what would they do? Or what Star Wars character would you like to do a heist with? Or which Star Wars character you'd like to go to Dragon Con with, and stuff like that. And it was really funny. You can tell the authors had a lot of fun kind of talking and throwing ideas back and just kind of goofing around. It's kind of Monday can have a little bit of a goofy feeling. A lot of the people are just so exhausted. Some people at the party are a little hungover, so like Monday's kind of the wind down day, and like, let's just be silly and have fun. So it was kind of a fun way to end Dragon Con. So that was my Dragon Con experience in 2023. I really enjoyed it. One thing I did enjoy that I forgot to mention earlier, they did cap some of the one-day ticket sales that they normally do. So I think they realized during COVID when they limited attendance, one of the feedback they got is like, this is a lot more fun when lesser people are here because it's a lot easier to move around. Now there's more people here now than there was during COVID. It's not that scaled back, but I think they've limited it below what it was pre-COVID because I think they realized like, it's nice if you can actually move around the hotels and it's not a solid mass humanity. Now there's still a ton of people there. I haven't heard the attendance, what they put it at this year. Pre-COVID, I think it was around 90,000. My guess is it maybe was in the 70 to 80,000 range. So still a ton of people, but you did feel like it was a little bit easier to move around, easier to see cosplays. All the rooms weren't maxing out immediately. So overall, my Dragon Con experience was really amazing. I didn't really have any huge complaints. I know I don't really go to the mart to look at the vendor halls. That seemed to be the main complaint this year, that something with the lines had got messed up and the lines were insanely long. But I never really go to that section of Dragon Con, so for me that didn't really impact my enjoyment. I know for some other people it impacted it a lot. But like I said, I love Dragon Con so much. I would definitely highly recommend everybody go to Dragon Con at some point. If you have any questions about Dragon Con, if you're thinking about going and you just kind of curious what it's like in more details, or if you have any specific questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have about Dragon Con. And I'll try to be as informative as I can in those comments, but if I don't know, I'll try to send you in the direction where you can get some of that info. So in the comment section below, beyond, if you have any questions, let me know. Did you attend Dragon Con in 2023? And if so, what was your favorite part about it? Was it a panel, cosplay, some event or party you attended? Let me know in the comment section below. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button. Again, I apologize for misspeaking. I'm tired. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate the support. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to my long, winding speech about Dragon Con 2023. And I'll see you the next time. And who knows, maybe I'll see you at Dragon Con 2024.